So, meanwhile, we're connecting with a totality. And more so than just on the basis of a scanning, but to go a little deeper into it. Deeper means more connection, more yeda, more connection. You still have a question?
No, you gave me the full answer. It's just, in other words, when we read it consciously, we're putting more effort.
That is correct. When butts go through more of an effort, it goes through more of an effort. In other words, if I throw the stone with more effort, with a greater effort, the splash will be greater. Why will it be greater? Not that the impact received more, but the revelation of the subconscious, the revelation of the circles, which are subconscious, exist, not revealed, become revealed to a greater extent. In other words, if it's in the middle of an ocean, I throw it with all my effort, as opposed to little effort, the circles will not travel as far. So that's what we're trying to do. Hold on. Okay. All right, so we're going to read a little here in Shaar HaKavanot, the Gates of Meditation, 219. Yivai bo lama hem beit yamim de Rosh Hashanah. Why are the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah? 2 days. Mikushar ima amor, and it's connected with that which already has been said. V'zeh l'shono. V'achar shenidvai inyan zeh, nidvai inyan beit yamim de Rosh Hashanah. Ma inyanim. What is this matter concerning 2 days of Rosh Hashanah? Ki harei nogan lasot beit yamim de Rosh Hashanah. Because we do actually observe 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. Gamata be'eretz Yisrael. Even in Israel. Unlike the other holidays, we observe 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, whereas the other holidays, such as Sukkot, Pesach, and Shavuot, are only observed 1 day. Ma she'en ki b'shar hayomim tavim, aval inyan muvan im haniskar ki b'chinat yesh b'zeh rampin. Beit b'chinat yesh b'zeh rampin. But in effect, there are in this outer space consciousness, which is where all the action is taking place on Rosh Hashanah, there are 2 phases that must be dealt with. V'heim chitzoniyut u'pnimiyut. The external and the internal. U'kenegdam ein beit yamim tovim de Rosh Hashanah. Since all of Rosh Hashanah is dealing with 2 aspects of Ze'er Anpin, the external and the internal. So he says immediately you have a clue as to why we are referring to the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. Before I touch on the answer, which he then delves into it more fully, we discussed the last time on what is Slichot, what is Elul. We didn't ask another question, which in Kabbalah everything is permitted and everything is encouraged, as to why is there a Resh and a Yud? I mean, it's sufficient to say, look at the amount of knowledge I've received by virtue of knowing what letter created the planet Mercury and what letter created the sign of the zodiac Virgo. Resh is for Mercury, and the Yud is for Virgo. But why these 2? Is there also a reason why? There must always be a reason, usually a reason why, unless it specifically is mentioned in the Torah by the word chak, statute, which means there are certain aspects such as meat and dairy. While we understand why you cannot eat meat and dairy, nevertheless, why were these 2 entities chosen to represent a system by which they cannot be merged? In other words, there is no central column existing, no central column energy intelligent force that can merge these 2 into a harmonious circular entity. We don't know. That's why it's called Chak. That we don't know. We know why we're not permitted to eat together at the same time, meat and dairy. But why this statute arose, meaning there's a lack of a central column energy intelligence, this is what we don't understand. But everything else about it, we do understand. So here we're asking, why Resh and Yud? And there are essentially two answers, which are really one, as to why the Resh and the Yud were chosen for this month of Elul, which precedes Rosh Hashanah, which was created for no other purpose but to assist us in accomplishing what has to be accomplished on Rosh Hashanah. The Resh in Hebrew means poor or lacking. That's what the word Resh means, meaning the letter also has a definition. The Yud represents, generally speaking, the head, the Rosh, almost the Keta of the Tetragrammaton. Whereas Resh deals with the Malchut aspect, and the Yud deals with the Tetragrammaton aspect. Now we said that the word for Mercury is Kochav, Kavav, Kabet, 26 and 22. To portray the two aspects of this universe, light and vessel. The Tetragrammaton, which is 26, the Yud K Vav K, is represented by Mercury in a sense, because Mercury is a cause in relation to the signs of the zodiac, and the Yud is for Virgo, which is the vessel. Yet the two letters themselves refer to the opposite of each other. The Resh, which means poor, which is always associated with meaning lack, meaning without light, it generally refers to the vessel, and the Yud, connected with the Tetragrammaton, deals with the light. One respects to the other, meaning Ze'ir Ampin. And together we say they create one unified state. One unified state, and this is what Elul is all about. But why is it Resh and Yud? Because it adds up to 210. What is 210? The same word, the same meaning as we have in the Torah of Redu, Resh Dalet Vav, when the Creator told Avraham and everyone answer afterwards that the Jew ultimately must wind down in Egypt. He must go down. The word Redu means going down. So there we have our clue of the 210. Going down. What does that mean, going down? And so all of the books on Kabbalah explain that as going down, meaning a form of purification, the suffering. Redu is 210. Resh is 200. Alid is 4. Vav is 6. It's 210. Not by coincidence, the same numerical value of Virgo and Mercury.
Didn't you say also that was one of the ways they counted the slavery of the Jews in Egypt, also 210 years?
Yes, and okay, that's adding another dimension. And also that Redu meant 210. Those were the amount of years that the Jew was in Egypt. That's right. That's right. In other words, that one little word, or that 210, represents many aspects of the same thing. It's really the same thing. Redu represents a lowering, to whatever extent. Now, lowering also means higher. Why? Because we learned in Talmud Esesfido just the last session, that where do you have the greatest desire to receive, the greatest dichotomy between the vessel and the light? Where? where we are in the world of Asiyah, the world of action, or is it in Adam Kadmon? Do you remember? Where is the greatest desire to receive? What's that? Adam Kadmon. But Adam Kadmon is Keter. Adam Kadmon is the seed. Adam Kadmon is the closest to the light. How could you have such an impure vessel called the greatest desire to receive? We said that's exactly the paradox. Only with the greatest desire to receive can you accomplish or achieve the greatest revelation of light. But because of the aspect of bread of shame, Adam Kadmon remains in what state?
Potential.
The state of potential. Potential, and ultimately in revelation, the outer circle is going to be the biggest. When you throw the stone, what do you see? Nothing. Nothing. Not until it comes to that final point called Malchut, impact. Despite the fact that after impact, paradoxically, the outer circles are going to be the larger circles, where it should be the reverse. But this is the world of paradox. We understand that. And we know why it is the world of paradox. Because without a Malchut, even in Ein Sof, without a Malchut, there can be no revelation. There can be no revelation, whether it's because of bread of shame, or in the Ein Sof, there could be no sharing unless there was a true, intense, infinite desire to receive everything. So whether the cause is bread of shame, or whether the cause is the infinite desire to share, there must be a Malchut. So this is the paradox. While the seed should be the high point of this tree, nevertheless, it winds up to be not only the high, not that it is not only not the high point, but it completely disappears. It completely disappears. There is no recollection that a seed ever existed. This is what we are referring to when we're talking about our subconscious, our soul. It is like there is no soul to be reckoned with. Where do you see the soul? The only thing that we're familiar with is the body. No recollection that there's something else going on within us that's motivating all of our action. There are times when we simply think, and we are, by television, by environment, we are led to believe that what is most important is the physical appearance, the physical action. Forgetting for a moment that there would have never arisen a physical action had there not been a prior thought. This is the world of paradise. This is the world of concealment. But it is not contradictory. It is not contradictory. So, to achieve the highest point of revelation called Mount Sinai, what was necessary? Ridu. Go down to Egypt. Go down to the place where things were so bad. Therefore, that would explain for us, for a moment at least, not that we're going to make an attempt to understand the Jew. He is the most paradoxical of all entities in this universe. But achieving a state of consciousness of revelation on Mount Sinai, how could he then say, let's go back to Egypt? How could he say, let's go back to Egypt? There was so much revelation. He then understood what Egypt was about. It's like when I throw the stone. I then understand what the whole picture is all about because I see the outer circles. That reminds me, it brings me a recall that really, where the action is, not at the point of impact, where it logically, rationally should exist. Where does it really exist? Come on. Because it's really in the potential form. Always in the potential form. All we have to do is reveal the potential form. But anything but the potential form is in effect zero. Point of impact. Zero. So what happened in Egypt? They were supposed to go down. And then they went out. Revelation. the high point of revelation. It's like after the impact, after the butts, after the malchut of going down into Egypt, with all of the suffering. This is what we experience in the world of action. There's only one purpose in the real world of action. Effort, suffering, cleansing. Not that you get anything at that level. All that achieves planting, sowing, removing the stones. Then what? Bury the seed, you never see it again. What a paradox. All my effort is to conceal the thing that's going to produce a tree, going to produce an apple. Why that way? Let's plant the apple. No. Everything must go through this illusionary process of ultimate. That's our world. As many times as I repeat it here, to make us conscious of the fact that there is two worlds, the world of making, the world of Zeir Anpin. The Jew, despite his elevated consciousness of Mount Sinai, fell back immediately. He said, well, wait a second, how did all this originate? Wasn't it through Egypt? Wasn't it through the world of making, through the world of action? That's really where the action is. In fact, it's called Olam Asiyah. It's called the world of action. Then, if that's the world of action, that's where everything must be. That's why they always said, let's go back to Egypt. It seems that's where things really, came about. From there came everything. Even Mount Sinai came from there. That's where all the benefits of this universe must exist. Where? In Egypt. It's like we make the same mistake. Get involved in something of a material form, and we think, this is where it's all at. And then become disappointed. It's not where it's all at. It's to raise it's only a means by which we can raise our consciousness, and that means, unfortunately, does not even contain consciousness. It contains zero. It contains an illusion of consciousness. But that illusion is so great that it drove the Jew back with a desire to Egypt, and it drives us each day, seeking the physical reality of all that is around us. But it's a mistake. So, Redu or the Reish Yud, these two, and that's why they represent this one unified whole, because these two, in these two samples or entities of consciousness, represent everything there is to know about this universe. It represents all of the information that there is in this universe. It represents the world of Kavav, Zeir Anpin, the reality world, and it also represents the world of Malchut, the world of Vessel, the world of Virgo. Therefore, in this month of Elul, we make an effort to do tshuva, which means to think what I might have done wrong, where I may have wronged people, to ask them for forgiveness and everything surrounding that, only because this is the effort that I put in that to permit me to connect with these two paradoxical worlds of Mercury, which is the higher level, and Virgo, the lower level. All right. With that in mind, we now can understand why there are essentially 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. What we have already explained elsewhere, B'tfilat Shachrit Dechol, concerning the matter of prayer in the morning. All of the prayers. This is a revelation for most, even maybe for you today. All of the prayers and meditations that are recited during the time of the exile and destruction, it is It is so weak. It is so weak that all of the prayers that one initiates has no strength but to elevate and make a connection only with the upper consciousness, only with the pnimiut ha'olamot bilvad, only with that 99%. You say only the 99%? That's great. But remember what we said. Don't forget, although we may have forgotten, despite the fact that 3 minutes ago we spoke about it, that the pnimiut, the 99%, is only potential. Only potential. All our prayers, says the Ari, and it's a mind-boggling revelation, deals only with the potential. Nothing becomes revealed with prayer. In other words, he's saying it only deals with the pnimiut, with the internal, what we call, quote, subconscious, whatever name you're going to give it. It deals with the seed. It does not deal with the ultimate, with Malchut.
With the DNA, sort of.
That's right. It only deals with, like the DNA. Nothing more. Nothing that deals with the revealing world of action. Because that's where things take place. Where impact occurs is where revelation takes place. Plant the seed. You get the fruit. Throw a stone. You get the circles. Prayers do not in any way, during the time of Galut and Churban, during the time of exile and after the destruction, never can elevate the physical, illusionary reality of consciousness. Never. And herein lies, when I get to writing that book on meditation, how Kabbalistic meditation, not the prayer book alone, but Kabbalistic meditation differs from all other forms of meditation, because all other forms of meditation are directed to one basic idea, and the objective is a very serious one and a very noble one, and that is to remove stress, because without stress, that you improve the well-being of the body and remove a great many other disruptive forces in our universe. And he's saying now, forget that. You'll never achieve it. You will never achieve anything on the physical, illusionary reality of the world of action. Never. We haven't got the strength in our meditation to achieve that kind of reality, meaning the removal of stress and so on. Then why do we have to feel all together, which would be the obvious question. But meanwhile, this is what he says. We do not have that ability. Okay? But what is being accomplished with the tefillah, meanwhile, is with the proper tefillah, and again, he is not discussing words of the Sidur, words of Rosh Hashanah, not even talking about that. But what he refers to as prayer or meditation is l'chlol pnimiut asiyah b'yitzira, is to raise the level of consciousness of the 99%, which its abode, which is place of existence for us, exists where? Right here. Where's the body? Body is down here in the world of action, right? All that meditation, real meditation, can accomplish So far, we're saying all that it can because we're a little disappointed. We thought it was going to remove stress and it was going to make things better. And we pray at the kotel, God help us, there's someone sick, right? And he's telling us, forget it, that'll never be accomplished. We ought to tell all those people who run to the Wailing Wall, and pray for an improvement in the physical well-being of whoever they're praying for. He's saying no. But what it does accomplish, he says, is to elevate the 99%, the unconsciousness or pnimiyut, the internal, from the world of action to the world of formation. In other words, to take it out of the realm of, in other words, take it out of the point of impact and bring it out of the limiting force of the body, which exists in the world of making, and thrust us into the world of formation. That's what prayer accomplishes. I mean, real prayer. Real prayer.
So one way it's revealing also, because it's throwing it out from the point of view impact, from the illusion.
Yes, it takes it out of the world of illusion. It takes us out of the world of illusion.
So we don't feel pain, we don't feel...
What's that?
So we don't feel pain. If somebody's sick and it goes from one line...
You mean it's even better? Maybe in the world is... Well, let's see. And it therefore combines the world of making, asiyah, with the world of yitzirah. V'zeh, 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 ad atzilut. And then it goes all the way up to the world of emanation. V'zeh b'koach nishmotenu. And this is in the strength of our souls. Animshechet b'pchinat ha'pnimiyut. Where does the soul come from? Where's its origin? From the internal, from the pnimiyut. That's what the soul is all about. That's what we refer to as the 99% of reality. Aval b'chinat achitzoniyot. But from the point of view of external, shehem olamot batzman, these are the actual physical worlds that we experience. V'hamlachim, even the angels, which are also in the world of action. Einam yicholim lalot, cannot rise. Cannot rise. This physical body stays where it is, including all of those entities connected with the world of action. This is what it means, ki hamalachim tzoakim. The angels are yelling, so it says in the verse. Eralim tzoaku chutza. The angels are yelling. Why are they yelling? L'sibat heyotam chutza, because they are on the outside. They can never achieve an elevated state of consciousness of the world of formation. They cannot. Ve'einam mipnimiyut kamo nishmat b'nei adam. But the soul of a person can ultimately achieve a higher level of consciousness than even angels. He has the potential. Angels can never go higher than Ze'ir Ampin of Malchut. In other words, we know where angels are flying around, let's say right here in this room, right? They can go through doors and they're not limited by the physical reality that we are. Angels decide to fly right now to Israel. In a second they are there. We, because of the physical bodily limitation, does not permit us to do that. So they are in a sense higher, but only from the aspect of the physical reality world. But within every human being, because there is a soul that is contained, that is enclosed within this physical body, we can achieve a much higher level of consciousness. We can take that soul and rise into the world of Yetzirah.
What is an angel, actually? Is it a soul that was given a position?
An angel is an entity that is a force. It's like a cable. It's like radio waves. I mean, it's a poor example, but I'm trying to give you something not of a physical nature, but it can handle. It's a radio if there are waves in the air, so it handles, the physical transfer of radio waves from one place to another. That's what radio waves. They are that's the function of radio waves. Of channels of transfer, right? That's what angels are. We pray, they pick up our prayers and transfer them to wherever they have to be transferred to. In other words, particular prayers require particular angels. Achieve that kind of level of consciousness. And before the destruction of the temple, during the time of the temple, there was only one day of Rosh Hashanah, not 2 days. 1 day. Why? Because during the time of the temple, the prayers that were recited could take the physical body and elevate that body and thrust it into another level of consciousness of Yitzhira, the world of formation. Take the physical illusionary reality and convert it through prayer, convert it into the 99% reality. In other words, there would be during the time of the temple, that's why during the time of the temple, there was peace and harmony throughout the world. Why? Because what was the purpose of stealing? Stealing would mean to achieve a physical reality. It doesn't always achieve happiness. It doesn't always achieve health. By virtue of material wealth, doesn't always bring you to the objectives. They are a means, but within themselves, they are not the objective. No one denies that. But rather, physical wealth can assist me in achieving other things that I might have need of.
But the Ari and Shimon Bar Yochai managed to elevate themselves above.
That's correct.
That's
right.
Time.
And in fact, that's what that's why we learn Kabbalah, to achieve that same condition.
But he says here that we cannot.
On Rosh Hashanah, yes. But how did they? What's that? No. Tefillah, in general, anytime. What's that? They did. That's right.
So how could they say that we cannot?
What's that?
In other words,
talking about, he's now trying to enlighten us, and that's why I stressed it, that this is a radical statement. I mean,
exclusivity up to that time, and then from his point on, he said nobody gets it anymore.
He says he didn't say that, did he? No, he's very specific, right? What did he say? He says our prayers cannot achieve an elevated consciousness that will affect the bodily, physical, illusionary reality.
But he achieved it himself.
That's right. The prayers themselves, he says, will not achieve it.
Not just pray, you have to do other things. Separate to achieve.
That's right. Now, we didn't say that prayer was the only way that we can achieve an elevated form of consciousness.
Because maybe to affect the physical, it has to go beyond just here, beyond just prayer and meditation, but the deed itself.
Maybe it involves. That's right. That's right.
The physical.
That's right.
You've got to bring it down to Malchut.
Correct.
Do something down here.
That's right.
Beyond just sitting on the throne up here.
Very nice.
Trigger it.
That's right.
So
That's
we set
right.
it up potentially.
In other words, that's right.
And then we trigger it off with whatever.
Okay. Shimon remembers the Hebrew word tefillah, if most Jews knew it, would probably place less emphasis on the prayer and more emphasis on the deed, because the word tefillah means tafel, means a secondary. The word itself implies just what he said. It's secondary. It's not primary. It does not achieve that which something of a primary nature was. So what's the primary nature? What is the primary nature? Primary nature is, in the world of action, deeds. More important than tefillah, to the extent, if you remember the Zohar, where two students of Rabbi Shimon had come into a house where there lived the son, the Yenuka, this little child of 6 years old, who saw everything. There was nothing of the physical reality that could obstruct his sight into all matters that were really going on. And when they walked in, he was the son of Ramav Nuna, the big fish mentioned in the Zohar. And the little child didn't want to give them shalom. And his mother says, why don't you want to give them shalom? He says, they did not say Kriyat Shema today. Little kid of 6 years old. All right? And there's a complete section on the Yenuka. In other words, there was nothing that the physical reality world could conceal for him. And therefore, Rabbi Shimon said that he would not live too long. He came here for a certain purpose, and he would die shortly afterwards. But in any event, then when they heard these words, they approached him and said, but we were involved in another mitzvah, in another deed. And therefore, if we were involved and it was a good deed, there are two cases. One was they were raising money for a bride and groom. They didn't have enough money to perform a wedding. And there was another case where they were involved in the burial of an individual. And therefore, ha'osik b'mitzvah patur min ha'mitzvah. They didn't have to pray. They didn't have to pray. The deed itself accomplished what prayer by and within itself, in fact, even higher. And so they didn't have to pray at all. Because the deed supersedes and creates a greater impact than the actual prayer itself. All right. So
in other words, the prayer is saying that they had the ability of thought over matter. Because if they were able to to influence the physical world, then they did it through thought. Because prayer is thought, is within the thought framework.
right.
They were able to control the physical through the prayer, through the thought. But we cannot do that now.
But no, that's right. When the temple does not exist, that's right. They could. Today, obviously, thought does not control action. Action controls, or the physical reality world controls the world of thought. All right? And when the temple was in existence, there was only one day of Rosh Hashanah. Even though there was only one day, but nevertheless it still depended upon man for him to establish whether there was Rosh Hashanah or not. That's the coming of the two witnesses to tell us that the new moon began or did not begin, which we have discussed on other occasions. Aval achar ha'churban, after the destruction, ubehechach lasot bet yamim shel Rosh Hashanah. You have to make 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. Ukeniska b'divrei Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai b'Sefer HaZohar, u'b'Sefer HaZohar, and in other places of the Sefer HaZohar. We have a necessity of 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. B'yom harishon ol b'chinat ha'pnimiyut v'haneshamot. The first day, we have an elevation of the internal, the real consciousness. And the second day, we also have an elevation of the external. Now we understand why the first day is referred to as the more difficult, the more severe form of judgment. The first day.
Deeper things.
What's that? The deeper things. That's right. Where we ask for forgiveness for those transgressions of a more severe nature. And the second day is din rafia, soft judgment. Vatamhu, what's the reason? Ki biyom aleph adayin lo nitvasmu ha'olamot. Why is it called the first day din akashya, more severe judgment? Because all of the worlds have not been sweetened. Beinam yecholim litalot likalel zeh b'zeh. Because they could not merge the lower worlds with the upper worlds in the first day after the destruction of the temple. Because the only aspect that was achieved on the first day was only that our consciousness was risen, but everything else remained on a status quo level. In other words, chaos, disorder. It's like throwing the rock. I already accomplished the fact that the outer circles are ultimately going to be revealed, but not until the point of impact. Meanwhile, nothing happens. And if on Rosh Hashanah we're here to remove and sweeten judgment, the first day, despite the fact that I have already created the action that will create the widest circle, the outside circle, or the ultimate. Meanwhile, on this day, because my tefillot cannot raise the physical reality consciousness, in other words, if it takes a day until there will be impact in the water, a whole day there will be no revelation of the circles. The benefit of action will not have emerged. The benefit of action will not have emerged because action cannot take place on the first day. The impact, the physical reality, creating a condition by which the unconscious will become revealed, cannot take place the first day. Therefore, therefore, it's considered the first day is considered as din akashya, as the day of severe judgment. Why? Because as long as there is no revelation of light, while potentially it's all been revealed already. Is that correct? The first day it's all revealed, only in a potential state. Therefore, nothing is affected on the physical corporeal level. Nothing. And because nothing is affected on the physical corporeal level, the rule of Tzimtzum dictates that what? The potential must remain in an animated state of suspension. Remember, you have to jump back and forth at the same time. While you would think that the souls have already risen, the 99% have achieved a higher level of consciousness. What more is necessary now? Everything is necessary now. Everything, yes. The establishment of the physical corporeal reality level. The paradox. Therefore, when we have now achieved an understanding of why the first day is more severe than the second day, because severe in what sense? Severe in what sense? The 99% have achieved a higher level of consciousness. Is there a question at the moment the stone leaves my hand? Is there a question that the moment the stone leaves my hand, that the outer circles have already begun to become revealed? In fact, they are already revealed. Do you remember the paradox? The outer circles are already revealed, except the 1% limitation of the eye does not see it. But anyone giving it a few moments of thought will understand, like the seed. Is there a fruit in the seed? Of course, and where did it come from? This outer circle, did it already become revealed? Yes, it did. Well, then why don't I see it? Because you're dealing with the 1% reality of sight. Sight cannot see anything until such time as when impact takes place. Look at the limitation of that eye. Look at the limitation of that eye. In fact, when the when the vision of what the eye sees returns, it comes in, as we know, in an upside down, right, picture. And then at impact inside here, things become, quote, clearer, right? Isn't that the way the eye works? Mm-hmm. Why does it become clearer? The answer is, who says it always becomes clearer? You mean everything we see around us, we now see beyond any question? Two people viewing an accident have two opposite opinions of what took place. If everything became so clear with sight, then how could there be two different diametrically opposed opinions of what was seen? The answer is that 1% never loses its limited ability to see. It's always limited. But without seeing, whatever the mind saw already before the eye captures the picture. Does the mind see it all before? Did the mind know before the accident occurred that there would be an accident? Yes. Remember, in the 99% reality, fragmentation of time, space, and motion doesn't exist. Therefore, in one mind, he saw one track of events. The other mind saw another track of events. And now, as it's being revealed, is not that the eye didn't see. The eye must see. The eye must, on a physical reality level, initiate that which takes place later. But make no mistake, nothing more is revealed by the impact, by seeing something. Nothing more becomes revealed than that which already was revealed. You saw the accident before. You saw everything you do every day in this physical reality world. You have seen it before it took place.
Maybe the soul sees it, not really the mind, but the soul.
Well, that's only the 99% of me.
Maybe even less is revealed because it's already become.
In fact, it becomes focused. In fact, that's the only problem. Everyone has seen everything, the reality of things. Who's at fault has been seen by both parties. Now something happens. The eye begins to limit much of that vision of the 99% reality. What a paradox. We think the eye, and because of the eye, is how you can now observe what's going on. No, Rabbi Shimon needed the eye too. He prayed too. But the prayer did not create that kind of limitation on him as it does for most people. In other words, it's mind-boggling. Prayer is now going to achieve what? A limited version of what the soul had before. The first day, the soul was elevated. It's already out of the realm of the Satan. It's all over with. No more punishment, no nothing. But because we need the physical reality, without the physical reality, without the secondary device called prayer, we cannot have a revelation of the 99%. But remember that when you pray, you are causing a diminution. You're causing a lessening of that which was already achieved. So let's not pray. Better don't pray. And the answer is the paradox. Without seeing, nothing will be revealed. Everything remains in that potential state. And as long as we are in the world of action, nothing is going to be achieved by that elevated consciousness of the soul. Only in the world of action.
Well, it sounds weird, but it sounds almost like the 99% is doing the 1% of faith. It's like there's a lack, always that complete lack in malchut. And by that focusing on that limitation, which is so ridiculous, It's almost like feeding the malchut in a sense.
I'm not sure if I understand exactly what you're saying, but
up here we see everything.
And we always see everything.
Down here it's like we see nothing, and we need these tools like the eye just
to see nothing, to see the reverse, to see nothing. If it's reversed, then what did we see? If in a reverse position, we saw the opposite of what's really going on. The eye, in fact, is even worse than smell. Smell. If I smell smoke, I can think there's a fire in the building if I don't see, or I can think that maybe someone put up a stake. What are the two things? But the eye was saying is even worse to an extent than smell. Smell tells me one of two things. There's smoke. There could be this kind of smoke or that kind of smoke. I can see things. And what happened? That's why it's called the eye. I is E-Y-E or I is I. Right? I, capital I. That's the problem. So the eye is a greater form of limitation. More so than the nose.
I guess it allows us to see what we're supposed to see. Since you mentioned once that it's connected to the Gul Neshamot.
That's right. Okay. So, therefore, on the first day, it becomes so limited, because there has been no elevation of the physical reality, consciousness. So it's like the eye and everything of a physical nature has remained almost at its lowest point. But don't forget, that's an advantage. Right?
So the second day is really a step down.
It's a step down and yet it's a step up. That's what confuses.
It's a manifestation.
That's right. But the second day, the first day is completely limited, we're saying. There's no elevation of the physical reality, meaning whatever we see and whatever we smell, whatever we touch, has not achieved any elevation. So you say that it's worse. Yes, in a way it's worse, but wherever it's worse, if the impact is greater, the impact is stronger, the malchut is more revealing, meaning the aspect of limitation is more revealing. By more revealing of a limited nature, we shall achieve a more revealing, unlimited nature. This is what confuses the scientist with the paradoxes of the universe. But we should not be disturbed, or we should not be receive a distorted view of this universe, because how can we reconcile Adam Kadmon with the world of action? They're diametrically opposed. We're saying now that on the first day, the eye sees absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. So you would say it's worse. But in a way, it's better. Why? Now remember again something we learned in Talmud Esesfirot. If we never focused into that picture, we would always recollect what? The whole landscape. Always try to move back and forth quickly before you become overwhelmed by one or the other. But if I don't see, then nothing starts. But the minute you start seeing something, you have already, we said, limited the view. If I never did that, I'd see more. That's true. So while on the one hand, the first day of Rosh Hashanah is din akashya, meaning it's severe judgment, it's true. Because without the buts, without that malchut, without the seeing, nothing will ultimately be revealed. Nothing will ultimately be revealed. It'll remain if that rock never touches the water. As we once said, along came a speedboat, and the rock lands on the speedboat, right? And it never touches the water. There will never be a revelation. Although the circles started coming into existence, is that correct? But the circles will never be revealed because this rock never had an impact with the water. So those that began as a potential never came into reality. Never came into reality. So that's what the first day is about. And therefore it's severe judgment, meaning severe judgment in what sense? It's called the day of Cain. There was Cain and Abel, and Cain was the more severe. He's the left column, so to speak. If someone, as the Ari says in another place here on Rosh Hashanah, those who cry more so the first day. When I say cry, I don't mean the physical tears necessarily, but those who and those who are connected will feel a difference between the first day and the second day. If the first day, you're more upset than the second day, there's a chance that you're involved in deeper judgment. Why? But because the physical reality, in one sense, isn't an impediment. It's not obstruction. It doesn't reveal a lot. Doesn't reveal, in fact, anything. But you don't have limitation. The physical reality. Therefore, things are of a more broader, clearer nature on another level. In other words, internally you feel things, right? You don't recollect anything. In other words, you may have wronged somebody during the year so severely it affected not only this individual, it affected his entire family and spread out to his employees. Who knows what one action that I may have initiated to where the result went, right, in the ripples. Remember, if I affected one person, he has 78 factories throughout the world, and I put an end to his business, whatever, right, by some wrongdoing, look at the extent. The circles are almost endless. This here I can feel on a what level? On a 99% level. Because on the physical reality level, what really happens? I wronged him. Did I do more than wrong him? But on the first day, why is it called severe judgment? In the other hand, because more is being observed on a 99% level of consciousness. Does everyone understand that? It's like I see nothing, but I'm not limited to the one individual anymore. Suddenly, without being conscious of it, because remember, if the mind, the rational mind, did not take into account my wrongdoing to one individual that affected maybe tens of thousands of individuals, and that's a possibility. On another level, the 99% level, I will feel that. I am not limited by the 1%. And therefore, it's dinakasha. Now we understand why it's called Severe Judgment Day. Because by virtue of the fact that the exterior, the bodily reality did not achieve a higher level of understanding. In other words, what reigns supreme is only the internal. The internal, without a rational comprehension, despite there is no rational comprehension, doesn't mean that I haven't seen it all. Is that clear? That's why it's called dinakasha. In other words, all of the wrongdoing that was involved in this one minor infraction, you might say, what I considered at that time to be a minor infraction, who knows to what extent the ripples have extended. Therefore, it's called dinakasha.
It's possible that we say that 99% is the mind, the intelligence behind it.
I don't like to call it we can call it the soul. I like to call it soul intelligence, because mind intelligence, again, is the brain. And if you're talking about the brain, which they know absolutely nothing about, but which we do know, is the revelations, the impact of 1%. So we're talking about soul intelligence.
But the intention, they always say that the mind, the thought is greater than the actual manifestation. And that lives in the 99%. We only saw the action. On the first day, we're taking care of, I'm trying to say is that they're taking care of the deeper intention.
Well, it extends further.
Talking about the 99% of the 1%.
What? Okay. But it's taking in a broader array of things on the first day. That's why it's called Sphere Judgment. Whereas, if I fired an employee, right? I fired an employee, I'll come Erev Rosh Hashanah and say, would you forgive me? I made a mistake. You can have your job back and so on. But the extent of what that may have caused, he may have divorced his wife in the interim because no panasa, and then she went back to live with her parents, and the parents were, retired and now and so they're affected, and then they affected others. It can go on and on and on. That works on the level of beyond limitation of what the eye sees. That's all I say.